You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with Michael Smith. Originally, Michael came from Melbourne, Australia, where he had a career as a very busy chef. As he struggled with his own health problems, he developed an interest in the effects of food and activity on health. This led him to a degree in naturopathic medicine and continuing his studies in functional medicine. Michael has a passion for health and fitness. He also has a passion for helping guide other people so that they can reach their best possible health, which is how he has been doing this for over 15 plus years. That's a long time. Michael, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. We've talked a little bit about what you do. And one of the things we ask all of our guests to do is to share their story of hope with the world. So do you want to go ahead and share that? And welcome.
For having me here. That's my pleasure. Yeah, so when that introduction sort of was partly my story, I used to be a chef working long hours, never really thinking about what I ate, just eating foods on the run. And I just got tighter and tighter and tighter. You'd think as a chef, you would have so much food to eat, but normally you're busy cooking for everyone else. You're busy cleaning up, and then you just sort of get out of there and grab something on the run. So I was surrounded by amazing food, but not really eating it. And I ended up getting exhausted. I was getting sick all the time. I couldn't, I was just struggling to get through the day. And I went to a doctor. They weren't really much help. So I went to a naturopath, and I never really heard of a naturopath back then. This must have been 25 years ago. And they gave me a diet to follow, and they gave me a few supplements and all these different diet and lifestyle tips. I spoke to my boss, and she got the food in at work. And I just followed exactly what that person told me, and I felt amazing. So I was like, wow, this is incredible. And being a chef is a stressful job, and I thought, there's no way I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so based on my experience with that naturopath, I decided to study to be a naturopath. And one thing's led to another, and here I am. It's been a long learning curve over I'm continuing to learn, but the first 5 years or so was just lots of study, and here I am. You mentioned 15 years. It's about nearly 20 years later.
I love it. I know that you met one of my daughters. So two of my three daughters were in med school, and they learned as they're going through med school that they prefer to be on the wellness side of medicine and not the reactive side of illness. And so they both became doctors of natural medicine. So it's weird how you find yourself on one path and something else opens up and becomes the exact space you're supposed to be in, like you.
Yeah, and a lot of people say to me, wow, it's so different going from chef to naturopath, but a lot of it's still about food. It's, what we eat, how we sleep. And it's been good for me to be able to give people recipe ideas, and not even just recipe ideas, but part of the people's issue is just the time to cook. So how do you can get these things done in a speedy way rather than spending hours in the kitchen? So unless you're passionate about cooking, no one wants to spend hours in the kitchen or have time to do that.
I think that is absolutely amazing. I want to talk about what you were just saying, that it's more than just what we put in our bodies, right? There's a lot of things that we have to be paying attention to. You can be the best eater in the world and have stress, like high levels of stress, which are going to hurt your wellness journey. So talk about those pillars, that how we put that together. And I don't want people to think like, it's kind of like when you go on a fad diet, right? You're only focusing on carbs instead of the overall picture of what it looks like putting healthy foods in your body. And you get focused on one thing and everything else starts to break down. And you're wondering, why is this not working? Because you can't just focus on one thing, right?
That's right. And you can't just focus on one diet because everyone has a different diet that might be best for them. So, I used to focus on, you need good diet, you need good sleep. And then I sort of realized that, the diet's one thing, but people need to manage their stress levels. So I focused on things like, meditation and exercise and those things. And in the last few years, I realized there's actually a fourth pillar to those three. So there's like stress reduction and exercise, diet, and good quality sleep. But I discovered by accident that breathing is super important as well. And so I've become a Buteyko practitioner, so teaching people how to breathe. And I discovered it by accident by learning the didgeridoo. And I went from not being able to swim 50 meters because I felt like I was drowning at the end of it to being able to swim for over a kilometer after that. And the breathing from didgeridoo to Buteyko is very similar. And it took me a while to realize that, but now I practice the Buteyko and I'm helping other clients do it. And we were talking earlier how people take breathing for granted. Like, sure, you might be 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and, you're breathing, you're alive, but you may not be breathing in the optimal way. In fact, my daughter, who's 15 now, when she was 10, I noticed she was just shallow breathing in her chest. And I said to her, oh, this is how you should be breathing. You should be breathing deeper into your diaphragm. And she said to me, wow, I'm 10 years old and I don't know how to breathe yet. And I said, don't worry, there's like people in their 60s and 70s that don't know how to breathe correctly. We're all breathing to live, but whether we're breathing correctly or not is another matter. Or optimally is probably the best way to say it.
So for all of you who are listening, you're probably thinking the same thing I was. So I had my first breath class at 55. And I remember, actually, I think it was 57. And I remember thinking, this is ridiculous, but someone gifted it to me. And so, it was free. So I was blown away by the fact that I was not I was a shallow breather and I was not pulling in oxygen to my body correctly. And once I learned how to change that, I wasn't feeling tired all day. I was much more focused. It really changed. My digestive system kind of changed with it, which surprised me that breathing had so much to do with your digestive tract. So there was a lot that came with that. And here I thought I was breathing because I was still alive. So I must be doing something right. But there is a way to optimize your breathing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like it can affect everything from digestion to sleep to energy because every cell needs oxygen, and how you breathe and how you utilize the oxygen is why it affects everything. So, the body balances carbon dioxide and oxygen, and both are important. And the breathing technique can help you utilize oxygen more. So, optimal breathing is not, breathing faster or deeper. It's actually breathing less to help your body utilize oxygen better. So with things like the Buteyko technique, you actually practice techniques where you slow down the breathing to the point where it's slightly uncomfortable, but not so it's stressful. And you practice these exercises on a daily basis. And over 4 to 6 weeks, you'll notice a big difference in your overall health. It doesn't take long, but it's a bit like exercise. Like when I first learned the didgeridoo, I stopped doing it, and those benefits sort of dissipated over time. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so continuing the breathing exercises now has helped me with not just sleeping better, but also being able to run and exercise and perform at a higher level than I was. And a lot of athletes are doing it now, not because they have problems like asthma, but they want to go from good to being great. It's like, so it's well recognized now that breathing is super important.
So I've never heard of the breath work that you're talking about. Can you say that name again? Because I want to make sure we're pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, it's Buteyko. So it's spelled Buteyko. And it was developed by a Russian doctor in the 50s to reverse asthma or treat asthma. So if someone's asthmatic and they're on medication, they could practice this technique and more than likely get off their medication within a few months.
Wow, that would be amazing. And again, he's not saying go off your medication if you're doing this without a doctor's approval. But for sure, I think that anytime we can reduce having to use medication or even lengthen the period of time that we need to use it, it's not chronic, man, I'm up for that. So when people are looking for this very specific breathing technique that you're talking about, where do they find something like that other than like they can find you?
Yeah, there's different different websites online. There's different practitioners out there. It is type of technique that would be good to do with someone and have you guided through it. A lot of it you can practice on your own, but just being assessed and being guided through the breathing is probably the best option. There's different books. Patrick McKeon is a Irish guy who's got a lot of books on the topic. And you could learn from a book, but it's probably best to work with somebody. And there's a lot of different breathing exercises out there. One of the more popular ones these days is Wim Hof breathing, which I've also done. And it's almost the exact opposite to Buteyko. Wim Hof is lots of deep breathing, rapidly, hyperoxygenation. And that's fantastic, and it has its purpose. And you can practice both techniques. So breath work doesn't have to be just one technique. It can be developing different techniques just to optimize your overall health and depending on what you might need. But I think most people could learn to breathe, less and more efficiently.
So out of curiosity, if I'm a new person looking like, wow, I want to integrate some breathing techniques into my lifestyle and help my health, now I would be confused. Like, what do they look for? So if I'm looking, I don't really have asthma, but I definitely want to oxygenate my body and my brain. And I want to take really good benefit of what I can pull into these lungs of mine. So what would people start looking for a fit for them?
Yeah, so if somebody has asthma or sleep apnea or anxiety or one of those types of conditions, definitely the Buteyko would be a good option. I taught a guy who was a truck driver Buteyko because he had sleep apnea and he didn't like using the machine, but he had to use the machine. Otherwise, he would lose his ticket to drive his truck. And he learned a Buteyko and was able to pass the sleep apnea test after that. The funny thing is, though, he gave up truck driving and became a Buteyko practitioner. He went and studied it. He was so blown away by the technique. So, but if someone like you who've done some breath work, you've improved your breathing, and now you want to look at maybe just energizing and taking to that next level, the Buteyko is great. It's like a ground work, but something like Wim Hof could be good to do. That's like a 15-minute sort of 3 or 4 times a week program where you do that like hyperoxygenation, and that's breath holding and also ice baths or cold showers involved in that. But you do feel incredible after that as well.
Well, I'm totally not down with the ice baths or ice showers, but like the breathing, I hear it's great. And we have some amazing people around here doing them. But I don't like cold at all.
I was
So
the
that would
same. I
not be
used to
my
live
thing.
in the tropics and hate the cold. And I started the Wim Hof breathing. And after a week, I'm like, oh, I might just try the cold. And it wasn't so bad. And then now I don't live in the tropics at all. I live in Canada and the water is freezing here and I actually go swimming in the ocean.
No. Like if it's 90, it's okay. So it's almost 100 today. And I literally have a blanket across my lap and I've got long sleeves on. I just don't like cold. I like the warmth. I don't know why that is, but I don't like the cold. So I want to just talk a little bit more about you as a function, what you're doing in functional medicine and as a naturopathic, being trained as a naturopathic. So part of that was adding breathing in, and I really wanted to touch on the breathing because I know that that's where you want to grow in because you're so you're so passionate about that. But what are some of the other things that if you could give us like maybe 2 or 3 tips that we can be doing that'll help change our lifestyle today? Like not something that, if you do this for 6 months, you'll see this, but what are little steps we can take today to start making change in our lives?
Yeah. So I guess on the breathing side of things, one of the simplest breathing techniques you can do is something called box breathing. And that's simply breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. I ask people to do that for 2 minutes. And a lot of people tell me they can't meditate because their mind wanders. They can't, they just like can't meditate. So I say, yeah, don't worry about meditating. Just do this box breathing for 2 minutes. And if you can do it a couple of times a day, well, that's, a bonus. And for a lot of people, they don't take that time just to sit for 2 minutes and focus on their breathing. And the thing is, when they're doing that, they're meditating without realizing it because they're focusing on something other than their mind wandering around. So that's that's probably one of the first things I'll get people to do. As far as diet goes, it depends on where people are at. If someone's already eating great, well, then we might be looking at, where they need, is there something, we might do specialized testing to see if they've got digestion issues, to see if there's something else contributing to their digestion problems. But if someone comes to me and says, I want to do a test to find out what's wrong with my digestion, yet they haven't, tried even eliminating some of their trigger foods, well, that would be the place where I'd start. I would, focus on their food and what they're eating, and I don't ask people to eat a perfect diet. I don't do that. But if someone can do it for even a few weeks to see how they could feel, then we can add things back in after that. So that's not a thing you can, that's a pretty quick feedback. Over a couple of weeks, you can work out what the foods are your triggers and what foods, are optimal for you without any fancy testing.
So I know that that's a big functional medicine thing, is elimination diets. And I think it's super powerful because we've been ingesting things that aren't good for us for so long and not understanding why we don't feel good until we eliminate everything and literally introduce it one at a time and say, how do I feel after I eat this? And when I did that, like, I love eggs. And I didn't realize that the minute I introduced eggs, I felt disgusting, like, what's happening? And it was just one egg. And I knew that eggs were not one of my choice foods. That doesn't mean I don't ever eat them, or it might be in a cake or something, but I definitely limit my egg intake because of doing an elimination diet. And we have our grandkids visiting right now. And so I think I need to do a whole elimination diet again, because we ate all the kid things, right? Whatever, like corn dogs and like all the bad stuff on vacation. I felt like I needed a nap every day. I felt sluggish. My head started hurting. I'm assuming it was because of all the gluten overload. I'm not sensitive to gluten. I just limit it, right? Because I just know too much of anything really isn't good for you. And so I limit it, but we ate all the things these last week, and we're paying the price for sure.
And with elimination diets, sometimes, I might just start with one or two foods rather than everything, because I still remember the words of a teacher in college saying elimination diets just eliminate patience. So unless someone's super motivated, most people are going to run the other way if you ask them to do an elimination diet. And so I keep elimination diets for maybe someone who is, has an autoimmune condition or is chronically unwell. And then they're more motivated to do it. But for some people, it could be just, trial cutting out gluten or dairy or even sugar. It's just eat more, or not even cut things out. Sometimes just eat more vegetables. Like it could be as simple as that. But you got to just work with people and find out where they're at, and then find out where you can help them to get to that next step.
And you're right. I would never recommend cutting out everything. The only reason I was able to do it is every year I get an endoscopy and they make me eat nothing for 7 days, no food, just water, nothing. And so when I start adding it back in during that time, I would add in things one at a time. So gluten, by the way, is always the last thing I add in, because I feel like if you haven't eaten it, you will swell up a little bit. You'll have some inflammation. Even though it's just normal, it's not anything to be stressed about, but gluten's always the last thing I add in because I already know I'm going to react to it.
Yeah. And people say to me, like, sometimes I'll do stool testing and look at, find out exactly what's going on with people with their gut bacteria, candida, parasites, etc. And there's a marker on that test which measures for gluten. And some people, that comes back normal, and they say to me, how can that be? Because, I react to gluten. And it may not be, they may not have an immune reaction to gluten, but they may be reacting because it's a FODMAP, or it could be reacting just because the type of all the preservatives and those types of things in the bread. A lot of people in the US, Australia, they visit somewhere like France, which has more traditional bakeries, older grain flours, and they don't react to the breads at all. So it's not so much the gluten, but it's the quality sometimes as well.
I remember, Michael, when I was growing up, I grew up on a dairy and we could have nothing white. So we had no white sugar. We had only brown sugar in the house, and we had no flour. Like, we couldn't eat anything white, even though we're on a dairy and milk is white. But we always drank it like it was not homogenized. We had like the cheesecloth over it. We would pour it out. And I remember when I first went to college thinking, what are all these foods with, like, it's crazy. But it was the way we were raised. We ate really well. We grew our own vegetables. We didn't ever have margarine in the house. We weren't allowed to even have ice cream because my parents thought there was bad things in ice cream. But I can tell you I've gotten past that fear and I eat ice cream now whenever I want. But yeah, it's amazing. Like some of the things that people don't realize are not great for you, like processed foods. And when I started thinking about white foods, most white foods are processed. Like even if we had bread, it had to be whole wheat bread. It couldn't be white bread because they didn't want us to have anything that had been processed. And of course, my grandmother made us breads every week and would bring them to the house. So we were pretty fortunate. And then, I went to college and a whole new world of food opened up to me.
Sometimes you've got to go down to those bad places to realize how good you can feel like when you eat a good diet as well.
100%. Well, how can people connect with you, Michael, if they want to learn more about what you do and they want to maybe start understanding more about breath work and how they can incorporate that into their lives? Where can they connect with you?
Probably the best place is go to my website, planetnaturopath.com. If someone wants to connect with me directly, they can do so through the website. There'll be a contact us form there, and reach out and ask me any questions. And there's lots of different options on the website for different tests we do, and that's the best way. I'm not very good on social media. I do check into Facebook and Instagram sometimes, but the website's probably the place to go.
Perfect. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being here. Actually, I think I would love to have you back, and I'd like to start breaking down things that we can just dig into so people understand more about how breathwork can change their health journey and definitely enhance it. And I know that you're all still probably thinking, I breathe just fine. Like I'm not dead. So something's going right, but it really can enhance your wellness journey. And if you can do something that's going to cost you nothing, right? Learning to breathe correctly and some skills, what are you waiting for?
Exactly. It's probably one of the best, bang for your bucks you can get, just learning how to breathe.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate having you.
You're welcome, Jana.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.